Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you, looking back over what was a relatively quiet week in the British Basketball League this week. Just one midweek game. So let's start there on Wednesday night. Worcester Wolves 88, Sheffield Sharks 72. And really fascinating one. This Wolves seem to have flipped a switch now. They seem to have really hit their stride. Those two games against Leicester, one they lost on the buzzer, one they won on the buzzer, has really given them a momentum shift. And we really saw in this game they were pretty dominant.
Yeah, they kind of reached the point with their lineup that they're all used to playing with each other, and it's probably 5 or 6 games it takes. So going down to 6 or 7 guys is a problem to start with, because you're trying to figure out how to do it and the coach is trying to figure out how to play. But then as the players get more and more familiar with it, it would actually be more difficult for them to actually introduce an 8th and a 9th into it, because now the guards are really comfortable with each other. And I can take you, if I take you back 20 years, right? This is a test, right? To Brentwood.
Yeah.
And Rod Brown.
Jason Kimbrough, Rod Brown, and
come on. Rashad Johnson.
Good. Rashad Johnson, yeah, there you go.
Rashad Johnson. 3 guys, 3 6'1" guards, 6'2" guards, played for Leopard with a undersized athletic 4, Enrico Alderson, and Jordan Williams is doing the same for Worcester. It is like going back in time, because Baunecht, Kimball, and Anderson are just so much more comfortable with each other. And then when they need a break, he doesn't go any bigger. He just puts Elan in to kind of spell the other guys. And what that means is that they have a system of play. They have Parks, who's playing really, really hard, which means he's giving them a ton of effort and he's giving them some good finishing around the rim. Jordan Williams is actually, really needs to be praised, because he's kind of stepped back a little bit to create a little bit of space, be smart, make the right plays. And suddenly they look like a formidable unit. And the new guy, Burns, is kind of coming in, but Matt's doing a good job of integrating him relatively slowly and seeing how he fits in. But he seems to be able to shoot. He seems to be able to communicate. And so he's going to help them as well. So, it's all, really positive for him, because what we know is that all those 3 guards can score.
Yeah.
Every single they can score.
Anderson had 22 points, 8 assists off the bench, but in 30 minutes. So it's not really off the 31 minutes almost as well. Not really, but a plus 22 as well. Impressive. Yeah. Sheffield they look just out of sorts, really. They're just shooting, particularly Retino and Lewis were both 3 of 11 from the floor, 1 of 6 from 3-point shooting, and that really hurt them. They couldn't get anything consistently going.
Yeah, Retino's kind of hit a wall. But the other thing is Sheffield were coming off some big wins. They played, they beat Newcastle twice in Newcastle in a week. I mean, that's, that's a big matchup, because they play each other a lot, those teams. And coming off 2 wins like that, you all kind of feel good about yourself, but there's always the next game around the corner. And then they got a little bit out of coke, but they are so dependent on Nichols and also on Lillard's temperament.
Well, he got disqualified out of this game. It was an actual ejection rather than he got a technical for the 5th, but he also got thrown out as well.
Yeah, and Atiba got thrown out as well. And you have to say that, and he's not the first person in this conversation to have been thrown out at Worcester, by the way. But you have to say that they lost their discipline a little bit, and that was out of frustration. It wasn't. They weren't losing a 23-point game because of the refs. It was because Atiba was frustrated with his team, and then you get frustrated with calls. And then, unfortunately, Lillard does something which is going to disqualify it. If he's disqualified, he misses a game.
Yeah.
So he's going to lose a game because he couldn't keep his mouth shut after being fouled out. And that's a lesson he's going to have to learn. And that everything has ramifications, and sometimes you just got to walk off, take your defeat on the chin, and get to the next game, because those guys have been playing really well. So that happens once in a while.
Yeah.
You're playing really well, you win a ton of games, and then you have a letdown and your team jumps on you because they're playing really well, because they're in their rhythm. And they didn't ride with it very well, unfortunately.
No, let's move on to Friday night then and start up in Cheshire, where the Phoenix pulled off another upset against the top of the table team, beating the Leicester Riders 93-91. And Leicester had started this game really well. Lee looked a bit back to his old self after that groin injury, and Anderson Washington hitting threes, Crandall a couple of scores, and Leicester were up 15 early in the second quarter.
Yeah, I still don't think Lee's absolutely right. I know what you're saying. I still just looking at him, he may be 60, 70%. He's gutting it through. He just didn't look quite as mobile as he had been. But nevertheless, no, I mean, again, Leicester's starting lineup is hurting teams. It is just destroying teams now. Primarily through Crandall and Nelson Henry, and then when Corey Johnson is on, then he becomes that third wheel. And they're getting off to great starts. It's all out the half-court offense, though. So they're not getting as much out of transition. They're certainly not getting as much off turnovers as they have in the past. When you're in a half-court offense and you're relying on your half-court execution, you have to hope that the other team is also not executing well in the half-court, because then it becomes a question as to who makes shots and who misses shots. And Leicester struggled a little bit with their bench. Fraser struggled a little bit to finish. We've had that conversation before. Falzon didn't play much. And obviously the other thing for Leicester is that they're integrating Heron. And Heron, it's not easy integrating him, because actually he's a two-position player. He plays the 2 and he plays the 3. So when Crandall and Washington are on the court, Rob's playing Heron at the 3. And it's the same. It's still a wing, so you're still in the system, but you're playing with different players. But at the starting lineup, he's playing at the 2 and Corey Johnson's at the 3. So he's got a lot to assimilate, in a relatively short period of time, against teams who've been playing together for a number of months in a system which has been running like clockwork for a number of months. So there is going to be a drop off there. It would be absolutely incomprehensible if there wasn't a drop off. We're losing a guy who understands everything and bringing in a guy who doesn't understand anything, no matter how talented he is. So this is a good thing with Worcester. In theory, you look at Leicester, for instance, Leicester's lineup, and you think, well, it's still they've all played together. They all know the stuff. They're still really deep. But they're introducing a guy who hasn't played, who's now playing 20 to 25 minutes a game. Whereas Worcester have got 7 games in a row playing the same players. And that really does give you, it's harder bringing players in than it is losing players. So that kind of, it just impacts a little bit about their fluidity as well. And then Cheshire are the kind of team who we've seen in the BBL so many times, who have dynamic guards.
Yeah.
And dynamic guards can bring you back into a basketball game. And if your stretch 4, Jalen Hayes, we've talked about again before, if he is on, and he is a matchup problem for everybody because of the skill set he has, then Cheshire are going to be in every single basketball game they play. So they came back in the second quarter, and I think it was virtually tied at half time.
Yeah, it was tied at halftime. Hayes was the key factor in that, as you say, a 12-2 run. It was 42 apiece at halftime. Swung back and forward in the third quarter, and then they made a bit of a run with Ross hitting 5 points. Cheshire opened up a 76-69 lead with 6:25 to go, and then Leicester responded with 9 points in a row to take the lead, and then it comes down to who can make plays at the end.
Yeah, there was lots of things in the around that fourth quarter. It was a really interesting game to watch, because there was firstly, Cheshire won the minutes when Crandall was off the court. Crandall sat down around the third quarter break. I think he was +7 in the game, or +8. And, Cheshire won by 1, so Cheshire won those minutes by 7 or 8 points. And we've said previously, you have to win those minutes. That's despite Connor making a 3 on the buzzer at the end of the third quarter. Then Cheshire scored 30 points in the fourth quarter. That is a significant amount of points to score against a team who's looking to win the league, because teams who generally win the league it's not about their offense at the end. It's always about the defense at the end. Are they going to shut you down? And Leicester really couldn't shut Cheshire down. And in relation to matchups, there was some interesting stuff going on, because at one point Ben went to playing the 2 big guys together, Matthew Bryan and Jimbo Lowell, in the fourth quarter, and Jalen Hayes was at the 3. And he did that. He tried it a little bit against Newcastle, but not so much the week before. But he did that in order to obtain a mismatch for Jalen Hayes, and he went down low to Jalen Hayes against, at that point, I think, Corey Johnson. Now, that then gave Rob a decision to make, because Rob ended up with Johnson not on the court for most of the fourth quarter. And he was kind of looking at Jamel Anderson to guard Hayes at times, or Heron, the stronger guy, to guard Hayes. So he's adjusting to that. Now, Corey Johnson's had a good game. He's made 5 threes. But offensively, I think what Rob understood was that offense wasn't going to win that game. You needed stops. Yeah, and then finally, so Corey Johnson is coming back in the game near the end, and to give them some offense, because they're in a scoring race by then. But then the Cheshire guards get off, and particularly McCall and Ross start finding each other. And a couple of times, Rob even went to a zone, and McCall shot them out of that zone as well. So you get to that point with a minute to go, and the last minute is a story in itself.
Yeah. So Ross and McCall had made some shots. Johnson hits a 3 to cut it to 1 point game, 88-87. Ross is fouled. He makes some free throws 18 seconds to go. Gino gets fouled and he makes 2 free throws 16 seconds to go. And then at that point, Ben Thomas chose to advance the ball rather than take the full shot clock. Now, there's only 2 seconds in it, and you know a foul is coming because you're up 1 anyway. So it kind of makes sense in that regard. But the thing that he was trying to avoid was the turnover, and they got a 5-second violation.
Yeah, a few things. I mean, once they were up 4, Ross made the mistake of doubling down on Nelson Henry, and he kicked it out to Johnson. And Johnson was 3 for 4 feet outside the 3-point line, but it doesn't matter. You know, now you're up 4. Nelson Henry makes a 2. You're good with that. You know, the worst case is that you're up 2 with the basketball. When you're up in 2-possession game in the last 45 seconds, you can't be giving threes. It just changes the whole dynamic of the game. So that was a mistake, allowing doubling down too far, helping off. Nelson Henry, smart passer, made the right decision. He generally does make the right decision. Kicked it back to Johnson. But they have to foul because we're in the last 25 seconds. So that's a 2. Then you're happy because you foul. You still it's a 2-possession game. They foul and they swap foul shots. So Ross makes 2, and they're up 4 with 18 seconds to go. And then, as you say, then Matthew Bryan Ammonen commits a ridiculous foul. It's an absolutely ridiculous foul on Crandall, 65 feet from the basket, when he needs to be back in the paint, defending the paint and defending the penetration. And that gives Leicester 2 free points with the clock on the line, puts more pressure on with the clock not moving, puts more pressure on his guards. And at that point, that's when Ben calls the timeout. So they're at 1, Ben calls the timeout. Now, I hear what you say about, I understand why he'd advance the ball. I don't. I don't think you do. And the reason I think that is because they did this last year, Cheshire, on a couple of occasions. And on a couple of occasions, they couldn't get the basketball in bounds. The advantage that you have, if you take the ball out on the baseline, is you can run the baseline. They've just scored. And generally, I mean, when I was on the bench, I tried not to take timeouts in those circumstances at all, because if you've got a smart player, he's going to get the basketball and throw it in bounds before anybody realizes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost a time where you're actually looking to say, how are my guys switched on before you turn to the table and call timeout? Because if they're switched on, you let them go and get the ball in bounds. Now, obviously, the downside is if you're going to turn it over, you don't want to turn it over under your own basket.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage of doing it. But the difficulty in putting the ball in from the sideline is that you have half a court to work with. You have a quarter of the court a quarter of the full court, because you don't want to throw it across court to the other side, because those passes can get picked off. But you can't throw it backwards much because of where the ball's inbound. It's a half court violation. So you're left with 42 feet by 12 feet of 15 feet of basketball court to try and have 9 players in to get the basketball in. And we've seen it happening recently. It happened with Sheffield recently. Sheffield, yeah. Somebody never get the ball in bounds. So I don't think I would have taken the timeout, and I certainly wouldn't have advanced the ball. And incidentally, I know we'll get to this later, but Ben didn't do that tonight.
No, he didn't.
Ben took the time when he took a
couple
timeout
extra seconds, but yeah,
he took it at the baseline. You know, and I think that's the way to go going forward, particularly when you're in a foul situation, because the only thing that can happen is you turn the ball over. We got burned by that in a cup quarter final against Cheshire ourselves. We get the ball in bounds from the sideline, and OJ made a layup on the buzzer and knocked us out on the steal.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, so they get the turnover, and now Leicester have the ball, and again, the Cheshire defend this quite well. They defend Crandall's pick and roll quite well. They force him to rotate the ball out to Lee. Lee penetrates to the middle, pulls up for a tough 15-foot jump shot. Matthew Bryan, fouls him. Probably does foul him. They call it on Jalen Hayes. No clue.
He was nowhere near.
Because he was nowhere near, and not only that, he ran to within Matthew Bryan. Ran to within 3 feet of the ref after it'd been called.
Yeah,
he ran to the table. He's literally right in front of her. So how that got everything was getting a bit scrambled by then, and Lee does his job, knocks down 2 shots, and this is why I don't like calling the timeout as much, because I think there's about 6 seconds left.
There is 6, yeah.
6 seconds left, and Rob has Leicester set up to deny Ross the ball. If you look at it, Jamel Anderson is on the inbounds, and Gino Crandall is face guarding Ross at half. Like, what that means is he's turned facing the other way, away from the ball, facing the player. So whichever way Ross goes, he can move with him and prevent him getting the basketball. And that's smart. You don't want Ross catching the ball. But what it does mean is that when McCaw gets the ball and is able to drive hard, which he was, everybody is in kind of a bit of a tizzy. They're in a bit of a scramble mode, because Jamel Anderson is having to run back 94 feet to get into some form of help position. So he's running back and his man is running forwards. You have, I think it was Matthew Bryan cutting to the basket. And what you don't have is Leicester set up in any real kind of half-court defensive system. So what happens is as McCaw penetrates hard to the middle, Bryan cuts the basket. Gino helps inside to probably
stop the ball, basically.
Stop the ball and maybe take away Matthew Bryan, which again is the smart basketball play. But McCall is good enough to make the pass, and then the ball gets to the guy you don't want to have the ball at the end.
Yeah.
Ross knocks down the shot. So the strategy on Leicester, I think, was really smart. But it just goes to show that, basketball is chaos. So chaos happens.
Yeah.
You can have as much strategy as you want.
Yeah.
But takes one step closer to McCall than he would want to, looking at it again.
Yeah.
Entirely understandably. And suddenly a good pass, a challenge shot, because he got back to him.
He got back,
Without fouling him. It's good. And that's the game.
Yeah.
So I thought Cheshire did their best to lose the game. Dumb fouls, advancing the ball, not getting it inbounds. Leicester scored on every possession down, got the 3. But sometimes players make plays. And Caron Ross had 29 points in that game.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, a lot of them in the fourth quarter as well.
And you have to make shots to beat. Yeah, you have to make shots to beat those Leicester guys, because they're not going to commit silly fouls. They're not going to beat themselves, and those guys made no shots to beat them.
No, Leicester 14-3 in the league, and all 3 defeats have come to buzzer-beating shots. So they are the bounce of the ball away from 17-0, if you look at it like that.
I don't even think, even if you go back to the Cup, I don't think they've lost a game in which they haven't been in it with a minute to go. The Cup semi-final.
I think London away in the Cup pool stages, they were behind.
Yeah, that was 7. That was a scoring race. There was 7 or 8 in that game. So, they've not come. That's why they're at the moment. That's still the team to beat, because they're consistently in every game, and eventually, they've won a couple of games on buzzer beaters as well.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
But and then that variance happens, and when you get down to the the last minute of a game, then in theory it should just be a question of win some, lose some. If everybody's doing what they're meant to do, the bounce of the ball. But the fact that they're always in the games is what separates them from everybody at the moment.
So let's move on to the next game. Newcastle Eagles 72, Plymouth Raiders 85, and a big decision made by Jeff King to use the permit to bring in an overseas color commentator and get rid of the local boy. Controversial there.
I got the call on Thursday night, and I begged and I borrowed and I offered, bribes and whatever. But apparently, a professional player who's been the best player in the WBBL for God knows how many years is far more qualified than me. I'm not sure I can really argue about that.
She was very good, actually, very insightful.
She was actually very good. And of course, I was sitting there listening, hoping for her to fail. But no, congratulations, Mr. L. You got the job. And I think Mr. Elder can be back soon anyway. So, so I'm sure that they can have me twice.
He pulls rank over everybody.
Yeah, they can have me twice a season, not too much of a good thing.
Let's get into the game then. No Gordon, no Ashley Hamilton for the Raiders. Eagles get up 7 in the second quarter. It comes back to level at 28 apiece, and then it's 39-33 with 5 to play, and the Raiders hit 12 in a row to lead by 6. And it was at that point, now bear in mind I'm watching it back, already know what the outcome is, but it was at that point that I started to worry, because to me Newcastle are a team that have done really well in recent weeks in the first half and not been able to sustain. So getting behind in that situation, it was the point at which I thought all Raiders are really on top here. Yeah,
they asserted dominance in that end of the second quarter, and part of it was their physicality on defense. Again, teams are now figured out that if you have to throw different long bodies on Fletcher. In particular, London did it with Dirk Williams and the Plymouth guys as well. Really, really loaded up on him. And then Newcastle played virtually the whole game with 2 big guys in the game, which meant that you have Defoe having to basically chase Will Neighbour around, which is tough for Darius, and also played big minutes. And then, notwithstanding all of that, Newcastle got off to a reasonable start. They kind of hit the Plymouth bench a bit around the first quarter break. At the beginning of the second quarter, Plymouth bench is still not probably where PJ would like it to be. They came on, but he didn't have them on for long, and it was when the starters came back in.
The interesting stat on that one that I saw is there wasn't a lot off the bench if you look at the numbers, but if you look at the plus minus figures, all the starters were at least plus 16 or more.
Yes. Yeah, which says that the Newcastle's run came against probably the Raiders' second string at the beginning of the second quarter, and what then happened was Fletcher picked up his second foul with 7 minutes to go. He played the whole game up until that point, and he has created so much gravity for Newcastle because the way teams are now guarding him. He gives the others opportunities to attack when he's on the floor, and it's always a decision of the coach. What do you do with a guy on 2 fouls in the first half? Is it do you sit him down the whole time? Do you look at the game? How do you play it? Because that's the time that the Plymouth starters are coming back. And what happened was both teams went particularly cold. It was a 12-0 run, but it was a 12-0 run over about 6 minutes.
Five or 6 minutes.
5.5 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't a significant. Both teams went cold. I think Newcastle probably had 8 or 9 possessions where they really didn't get much good, and to the point whereby Fletcher had to come back in with a minute to go, and at that point, or minute 30 to go, and at that point he's probably cold. He's probably thinking, I'm not going to be playing until the second half, and too late to arrest the run, and it suddenly becomes a 6-0 run to end the half. So Plymouth won the end of quarters and won the end of halves, and at that point as well, Newcastle's guards and Defoe in particular have played very heavy minutes. So you then get in the third quarter just kind of a gradual tightening of the. It
was basically Newcastle scored every 2 or 3 minutes, and in between that, Plymouth would get 2 scores or 3 scores. So the lead was just creeping out.
And it was the type of scores. This is a game whereby, despite the fact that Newcastle generally had 2 of Defoe, Adeniran, or Maxwell on the court at any one time, Plymouth beat them 58-34 on points.
Yeah, I've got that here as well. 58-34 in the paint.
And that thinks, well, how does that happen? When it's because points in the paint aren't necessarily big guys. Points in the paint is space, is layups from guards when there's no space to attack. It's stuff in transition when other teams turn the ball over and you get layups as well. So, you with that kind of stat, those lineups and that kind of stat, there was just no way that Newcastle can win that game in that situation. And, Plymouth are the best defensive team in the league, and they hold teams to 72 points. And they're the best defensive team in the league, not just on the points conceded, but on the points per possession, considerably. They held teams, and they held Newcastle at 72 points. So it's nothing that's we should be surprised about. They are really good. They have length in every position. Their starting lineup, you swap out Hamilton from Neighbour, you actually get a little bit more scoring and spacing. A little bit less defense, a little bit more ball movement, a little bit less defense, but still not. And you lose Neighbour from the second unit, which probably hurts the second unit, which is what we're talking about. But they're still, they have the best shot blocker in the league to come off the bench at this point. And then they have athlete like Ubiara to come off the bench, and Morcell is long, and Hamilton is long, and Neighbour is long, and the two guards, Porter Button and McGill, are in rhythm, and they are long and athletic. They're a tough team to score on. And so the moment that the game got to within 10 points, outside 10 points, I thought it was done.
Yeah, it was.
I just didn't see Newcastle create enough offense without Gordon.
Well, once it got to double figures, it never came back. Never got it back into single figures.
And you get the impression watching games whether it will or not.
Yeah.
You can sense that there's a run in a team. And there just didn't appear to be a run in Newcastle at all. They didn't seem to have a way of creating more space on the court, of getting their shooters going, of getting people to the rim. Nothing came easy at all, and that's a credit to Plymouth. They're 10-1 the last 11 games. They're bona fide good at this point in time, and teams cannot sleep on them at all.
And Lawrence to come back too. They will
again,
be.
Adding a player is harder than taking one away.
Well, yeah.
I get that, but that changes your defense. It changes your physicality in your defense. Andrew Lawrence is probably a little bit more ball dominant than any of the guards they've got at the moment, so that kind of changes the way they play a little bit. It will make them better in the long run, but it's always.
He is good though, yeah.
Good. Oh God, you can make them better in the long run, but when you get to March, you haven't really got the long run.
Yeah.
You've got to be better straight away. You can't be, particularly if you're trying to win things, you've got to be better in the next 2 or 3 games, not the next 6 or 7 games, because you haven't got the 6 or 7 games to play with. So a lot of it will depend on when he gets back.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to the Sky Sports game. Worcester Wolves 84, Surrey Scorchers 77, and Anderson into the starting lineup this time, which is no surprise given how he's played in recent weeks, but it does leave them a little light in scoring off the bench, and actually Richards I thought was tremendous in the early stages, and Evan Walsh as well got the Scorchers off to a 10-2 start. Wolves hit 15 in a row and took the lead, but it was a fairly even first half, really. Yeah,
it was, and it's difficult not to start Anderson because he does appear to be kind of when he's on the court, he's a central figure. A lot operates around him, and he draws a lot of attention. There's a lot of gravity on the court, so I can understand why you would start him, because you probably want to start him moving forward. Surrey are it's like a chemistry experiment at the moment. Korean's got so many players, all of whom have the ability to play. And what I mean by play is get minutes, real minutes when it matters. But I've yet to see a coach who can successfully stagger 6 guards, which is what he's got. I mean, it's tough. He got Cashaw, Hicks, Walsh, Hildreth, Raftopoulos, and McLemore. That's 6 BBL caliber players. And okay, maybe get 3 of them on the court at the same time, but then you maybe shift Teo up to the 4, maybe. But then you've still got 3 big guys as well. You got Lacey James, you got Hildreth, Lacey James, you got Richards and Rickman as well.
Rickman,
Richards and Rickman never played together, so how do you do that? So good luck to Creon on that. Like he said after the game, he said, "I might have to have a look at my rotations." And I don't envy him because he's got a lot of good players. But that can cause an issue with combinations because it's not as important as to how good the players are. It's just important how well they can play together.
Yeah.
So you've got to figure out who it is and whose turn it is on the basketball and the team needs to develop a little bit of a hierarchy. So clearly, when Hicks is in the game, he's primarily going to be on the basketball, and then when he comes out, it's probably moving towards Hildreth.
Yeah, looks like it, doesn't it?
Is running that second unit. And that's all good, provided those guys get used to it, but that's a work in progress. So, so they started off by going to Ryan Richards, and the difference in Ryan Richards is just palpable. I mean, I'll be straight. In December, having seen what he did last year in Plymouth, and a little bit in Surrey, I think, maybe, and having seen the way that he started in the BBL this year, I didn't see a future from him. I didn't see how it was going to get better, because he just didn't seem to be at the pace of the game. And again, it just goes to show that when athletes start playing on a consistent basis in a consistent environment, get their bodies right. It's so much about, particularly the big guys, so much about getting their bodies right. Then the skills that they obviously have can come out. It's not just Ryan Richards just popping to the foul line and shooting a foul shot and shooting a free throw line jumper. It's the way he's moving his feet when he's defending the screen and roll. It's his mobility under the basket in relation to competing for rebounds, because we've all seen big guys in our league who can't get a rebound because they can't move. And they get out rebounded by smaller, more athletic guys. And that's not happening to him. So he is now becoming a guy that you literally have to game plan for in this league. Now, the problem is that he's still probably good for about 25 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And you do have to play a certain way.
You do. And I think that's part of their problem as well, is because you talked about the sort of how do you get all the pieces to mesh together, but also depending on which pieces you've got on court, you play in a completely different way. Yeah,
that's right, because the bench lineup, is nice with Hildreth at the point. And Raftopoulos is kind of a shooter, and maybe even McLemore as well, as kind of spot-up guys. There's a lot of gravity, and because Hildreth is 6'4" and is a solid athletic defender and is playing, like he doesn't really care about anything other than playing. He's not any other things in his mind. He knows where he's going. He's not worried about a job next year. He's just, he's different to a lot of the other guys. He's just playing hard and enjoying himself. He's able to defend bigger guys. So the advantage of having a bigger guy handling the basketball is you can have more mobile players around him, and he can defend and rebound at the other end, and you don't lose out. So you like that. But the question then comes when you mesh Hildreth with Richards, which is what you'd like to do at the end. And Hildreth is looking to penetrate and get to the rim and create. Yeah. And Richards is looking to get the basketball where no one can stop him. Yeah. So there are little things that they have to worry about. But overall, they're a very competitive physical team. Now, they didn't get it done in this game, I think, primarily because of those issues that we've just raised in relation to a little bit of cohesion and a little bit of composure at the end of the fourth quarter. And the team that was more together because there was less of them, and they were more used to playing with each other, the fewer combinations. There's a hell of a lot fewer combinations in a 6 or 7 man team than there is in a 10 man.
Let's just so Hicks and James make a couple of threes, 10-0 run. Sorry, you're up 11 with a minute to go from halftime. Go into the halftime with the lead. There was something I noticed. We were on commercial break, and I just noticed that the new guy, his name's gone out of my head. Elijah Burns called everybody in, and he was like, "Everybody, come in to a huddle." And then he spoke to them, and I turned to Tuck and went, "Did you see that? Because you don't expect that from the guy who's only been here a week." And they came out in the second half with a different energy. He made a couple of threes. I think he got a rebound as well, and instantly back into the game. And I was quite impressed that the guy new into the team had the sort of gravitas, and everybody listened to him. It wasn't like they were going, "Who's this guy?" And actually they got a response out of the team straight away from it.
Yeah, I heard you say that on the commentary, and it kind of intrigued me because he doesn't come across like that. We've all come across Americans fresh to the league who are so hyped and so talkative and so into everything that you immediately think this guy's going to wear out his welcome in about 3 weeks. We've seen them, and who just aren't very good around. But he isn't a rah-rah guy, if I put it that way. He isn't a guy who's just clapping his hands and shaking his head and going around, chest bumping everybody and flying around the air. You don't see that. He seems to be a very considered, the way he plays, is very considered, smart, shooting the shots he's meant to shoot, making the passes he's meant to make. So to have that kind of leadership gene as well, if it keeps coming out, that is going to be big for them. It really is.
So once they'd made that 9-2 start, it was a pretty even game until about 5 minutes to go, and then Worcester pulled away with a 10-0 run, and I think it's the third game in a row where they end up on the free throw line for about 4 or 5 free throws because there's been coach technicals and bench technicals.
Yeah, they lost their discipline. Sorry, I mean, I heard what Creon said afterwards, where he blamed the refs without blaming the refs. But in reality, the refs missed a call where Hildreth got swiped in the face. And the baseline ref should have spotted that, but I don't know where the baseline ref was, didn't see it. That was one call. Then Cashel got a steal, but he was out of control. He went down the other end, he chucked up some rubbish off the glass. And that you're not getting a foul call for that with 2 minutes to go. I looked, as it happened, I thought that's not a foul. Refs didn't call it. I can imagine how it might have looked like a foul from the Surrey bench. It's a long way away. And I've been there at Worcester where you're shouting for a foul in those situations. But on the TV, no. And then the next play down, Hicks committed a dumb foul. It's not the first time. Let's be blunt. Hicks with 1 second on the shot clock, Hildreth playing solid straight up D, making Anderson go around him, Kimball shoot a fadeaway jump shot on the buzzer, and Hicks clamps him on his elbow. You see it clear as day. Now again, because of the position of the players, particularly Hildreth, I don't think the Surrey bench could have seen that. They would have been blocked off by Hildreth, by the bodies, because it was the wrong side of them. But at that point, the game's still on the line. It's 2 minutes to go. It's not 25 seconds to go. And you can't give them 2 free points. You can't do it. And they did. There was 2 shots. There was frustration technicals with 2 minutes to go. And, firstly, the coach, and then secondly, someone on the bench as well. That's what happens when you've got a long bench, players. You've got more chance of one of them saying something. And at that point, they make those foul shots. As you say, it's like an 8 or 9 point game.
9 points.
And it's at that point. I think then Teo chucked up a bad 3. They got down to maybe 5 and Teo or 6. And Teo chucked up a bad 3 from the wing, and the game was over. So it's happening too often for them for it to be a coincidence. They have to tighten up on their discipline at the end of games. And sometimes you're going to get a bad call, and it's a bit hypocritical because we all hate bad calls and we all rant about them afterwards, and I've been there myself. But ultimately, you have to kind of take it on the chin and move on.
Yeah. I mean, it remained a little bit interesting because having not missed any free throws in the game, Surrey then missed 4 in the last minute or something. Worcester, sorry, missed but it never looked like they were going to miss enough to. That
was just for the cameras, wasn't
it? Yeah. Williams 20 and 12, another 20 for Anderson. Richards 10 of 14 for his 21 points. Hildreth 11. Nobody else in double figures, and I suppose the upside of having a lot of people who can score is, they can all get 7, 8, 9, and that still adds up to a big number. But the downside is you don't necessarily know where it's going to come from.
It's a hierarchy. That the team needs to define hierarchy as to what roles people have. Now they're all bought in defensively with Surrey, which is good. You can see that. They're all bought in physically. They just, I think, will need a little bit of time to develop that hierarchy. And 10 players to play 200 minutes is tough. Because that means that's 20 minutes each. So somebody's going to be playing 25, someone's going to be playing 15, someone's going to be playing 30, someone's going to be playing 10. And finding out which guys are which is the skill. So he's actually, because he's developed the young guys, Creon, because he's developed Walsh over the season, because he's picked up Hildreth, because Caelan's become the player that he has, it actually gives him more issues and more difficulties in working out exactly what it is the best. But if they maintain their defensive intensity, that can get you through, because then you're not relying on the scoring. And
so let's stay with Surrey, but move on to Saturday. Surrey Scorchers 81, Glasgow Rocks 60. Not much in the first quarter in this game, but then Raftopoulos, Teo, Macklemore, had 7 points. The other two had 3-pointers. Sorry, a 17-2 run. It was 33-19, and we could have almost packed up there. And I was watching this game, and I got the sense that the more important game for Glasgow was Sunday. And by the way, the more important game for Glasgow was Sunday. And that they played like a team that wanted to make sure they had everything they could have in the tank for the next day.
I think they played it. I'm not sure. I'd say yes, but I would say I'm not sure how much more they have in the tank.
No.
That's their problem.
We'll get on to the Sunday game separately. But
when I say how much more, I think they may be playing to their level, and that's a bit cruel, but they looked a bit beaten down to me. And again, I mean, there are some interesting things. For instance, again, like they did at Plymouth, they started off and they were scoring the ball quite well early. And Delph picked up his 2 fouls in the first 4 and 5 minutes. And he sat down the whole half. He was done for then. And Jack Domney is struggling at the moment. I'm not sure if he's going through the rookie, whatever it is, but he's struggling, and he was nowhere near as effective as Delph. But this kind of 2 fouls and you're down meant that Delph missed 38% of the game in the first and the second quarter, in which time the game went, as you say, from a 0-point game to a 15-point game. Well, that's the game.
Yeah.
That's the game. So at some point, and this is the issue with, again, guards, the player coach and the coach, they have to have a decision. Say, look, it can't always be, if this guy's so important to us that he has to play, it can't. He's going to have to learn to play with 2 fouls. Yeah. In the first half, and it might not be it might be the first quarter, and then you come back and you try and get 3 or 4 or 5 minutes out of him, then you're sitting down again. So you don't. There's ways of balancing it, but just kind of just taking out your most effective scoring guy, and then wondering why we can't score. And they couldn't score without him, and they made some threes. But that was it. If you looked at how many possessions they scored,
it wasn't many
over that time. It was tough, and that is, they've got. Let's be fair. I mean, they've got Christian Keeling, who's very talented, but he's a rookie. It's first time out, and now he's getting everybody's attention because they're looking at everybody else. And Pondo's really struggling. Brandon has given them some energy, but nothing much in the half court. He's given them some rebound energy, so giving them something, but nothing which you think is making everybody else better. He's working hard for his team. He's making plays, but it's his energy which is, in theory, should be lifting people. And Quady, who is one of their main scorers, wasn't playing. Is unhealthy. Is injured, not unhealthy. He might eat good things. Van Sauer's struggling a little bit, so that leaves Gareth, and then you hope that Fraser Malcolm might make some. And that they didn't get enough high percentage shots, and even if they did get them, they weren't finishing them. And that meant that even what I was saying about Surrey's defense, even when Glasgow were able to hold Surrey down, which they were for a period of time, eventually the dam breaks because they just can't score. And that's why the games that, if you score 70, you have to expect to beat Glasgow at this point in time. Yeah. You get 70, you're going to win. If the Glasgow can keep it in the 60s, because they are dogged, they are cussed. They were in this game to a certain degree, and they do run their sets. So they're not going to give you in theory, they're not going to give you the basketball for nothing. They're not going to just come down and jack up rubbish shots, which kind of helps keep the game close, reduces possessions, etc. But they're just not. They just don't have enough offense, enough guys who can. You can give them the basketball and say they can put the ball in the basket. And one of the guys that do have is Delph, and he didn't play. Yeah. So it's tough.
Well, Keeling top scored with 14 points. He was the only player in double figures, and top scored in the game, by the way. And what we talked about with Surrey in the previous thing was Richards 13, 4 other guys on 12. Again, good distribution. That you can top score with 13 and score 81 shows you've got a lot of different.
Oh yeah, got a lot of depth, and also it's always easier for the coach to find those 20 minutes for every player when you're up by 20.
Yeah, it is.
I've been there. It's a comfortable position to be in as a coach because you can try things out. Because Creole has the advantage that at this now. He didn't have it earlier on in the season, but he has the advantage now that he knows his guys who's coming off the bench are coming in with energy.
Yeah.
Rickman is coming in with energy. Teo's coming off the bench. So he's giving them a bit of solidity. But he's always been an energetic player. Hildreth is a bundle of energy. Raftopoulos is a little gnat. He's around you. He's full of it. And so because he's getting that energetic kind of boost off the bench, if they ain't scoring, provided they're playing defense and getting where they need to go, the coach is happy. Your bench isn't going to lose games for you, which is the important thing.
So let's take it to today. London Lions 90, Glasgow Rocks 66. That's the trophy semi-final first leg. Rocks hit a few three-pointers early on. They were only down 4 at 18-14, and then Liggins, Dangakodo, Ware just turned it up a little bit. I never thought London really got out of second or third gear, if in truth, over the whole game, but they turned it up a little bit at that point. They get up 37-18 midway through the second quarter, and it was, again, we've talked about Rocks do not have the offense to keep up. Once you're away, they're not going to reel you back in like that.
Rarely, only with a lot of stops. And Delph played 40 minutes in this game, just to make the point from the last game. So he's important enough to play 40 minutes in this game. London, I think you're kind. I think second or third gear is kind. Justin came ready to play, made a couple of shots early because he's been in semi-finals before, first legs. The rest of the guys, Liggins kind of warmed into it. But the rest of them looked like it was a first leg, and it looked like it was a first leg that they knew they had no realistic shot at losing. And the reason I say that is it wasn't that they didn't play hard, because they did, but you could see it almost palpable when they extended their defense. If they did not want the Rocks to get the ball over half court or to catch the ball within 35 feet of the basket, London could have managed that at any time in the game. They could have stepped in there. And there was a time in the third quarter where I think literally Glasgow threw them the ball 3 consecutive occasions. Pondo, I think, and maybe Van Sowers, and they got layups off it. So that next gear was always there for London to go to. But the other thing is, their shooters didn't make shots, which tells me that they weren't really locked in to the game, because Glasgow, much to Nigel Lloyd's surprise, and I have to say, somewhat consternation at times, and seemed to decide that that the best way to defend the best 3-point shooting team in the league with a man-to-man defense which didn't take away the 3-point shot. And London got off 46 threes in this game. They shot 15 of 46, and I would guess 30 of them were open, more than open. In fact, virtually every single one of them was open. It's all shooters who are shooting them. And I did my little sums again on this game because I was interested when I saw the spread of shots. There's a Twitter account called Expected Goals on football. It tells you what they expect, given the attacking positions each team got into, what the expected goals should have been in terms of what scores. It's quite interesting for me. And expected points in this game. London had made all their shots in this game. London scored 213 points. Glasgow had made all their shots in this game. Glasgow scored 161 points. So there's a 52-point potential difference just on shots at the basket. Now, against that, to lose by only 24 is pretty good going. And because the reason
and actually,
for that,
it was only that Dirk made a few down the stretch that it got to 24.
And the crazy thing is, and what frustrated me with Glasgow, because it wasn't, I know offensively they are what they are, and the guys are trying, they're doing their best, and Garrett's running his sets, and they do play some nice basketball at times, but they're just a little bit challenged in relation to shot creation and ability to finish. Fine. And Quady's not there as well, and he's a pick and pop guy, which does hurt them a little bit, like Gordon hurts Newcastle not being there. But I can get all of that. What I can't get is that they got plenty of players. They're standing there letting DeAndre Liggins shoot threes like he is in a warm-up line. Which is okay. If that's your game plan and you hope you're going to miss, that's fine. You can do that. You get away with it. What you can't do is then give up 20 offensive rebounds as well. Because if your game plan is they're going to shoot 46 threes and 34 twos, which is what they shot. 46 threes. You better rebound those. 31 of them missed. You better rebound them. And then you've got a shot because you can go down the other end. You can slow the game down. You can try and get a good shot. You can maybe London get a little bit antsy, get taken out of their rhythm, etc. But the amount of second shots London got as well. You can't be giving up open shots and second shots. I mean, they could have lost that game by 50. Let's be blunt.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with any pleasure because I know it's tough, and I know that, as I say, that they're missing one of their main pieces and they are struggling to score in the half court in particular. And they are athletically mismatched all over the court against London, like virtually every team in the league is. But they have to rebound. You can still rebound. You can still go up and be scrappy. If they're going to miss that many, if you told me before the game that London were going to miss 31 threes, you would think Glasgow have a shot of being close, and they didn't.
No. So
that's something they've got to take away. There's no reason for them not in a semi-final. There's no, if you're not great, be scrappy. Be scrappy. And the only guy who was scrappy was Bunyan. Bunyan is the ultimate gamer because he had a disadvantage against everybody on the court athletically. I still don't think he's particularly healthy, but he knocked down shots, he got in the way, he took charges, he does all the little things, and they are so much better with him and Gareth on the court. And the younger guys need to look at themselves and think, well, we are athletically better than those guys. Why aren't we playing? And there's a reason they're not playing, because they're not doing what they need to do.
Well, there's only 5 teams have ever come back from double figures down. Nobody anywhere near as many as 24. So the Lions virtually. Hey,
I think we gave up 24 once, but we won in overtime.
Not at the end of the game. You might have been 24 points down before. I think that was you were down 24 to go with about 5 minutes to go or 6 minutes to go in the first leg.
Worcester, wasn't it? Away at Worcester.
Oh yes, sorry. And yes, but actually won. Yes, sorry. Yeah. You did give it all back. Yeah. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Still not given. We needed every single one of those 24.
Yeah, you did.
Given what happened the following week when Leicester destroyed us in the final, we probably didn't actually.
Yeah. So yes, well, we'll be surprised if London don't make it to the final. Let's put it that way. Let's move on to Manchester. Manchester Giants 76, Newcastle Eagles 101. Obviously, they made a coaching change. Well, departure this week. Pluto Vorliotis in temporary charge for this game for Manchester. Maxwell with 9 early points. Eagles get out pretty early to a double-figure lead, and probably should have led a bit more at halftime. I mean, Cassell makes a Cassell shot on the buzzer so that it's only 8, but Newcastle doing what you have to do against Manchester, just keep scoring.
Yeah, basically. I'm a little bit surprised they changed the coach in March when the signing deadline's finished, and you're just about to got a new 7-footer who's coming in. And at this point in time, you kind of are what you are as a team. So I'm not sure what a new coach can accomplish that the old one can't, but that's a matter for the organisation. The game itself was the Fletcher and Edwards show. Firstly, it was Edwards show in the first half, and it was a Fletcher show in the second half. And if there was numbers for combined triple doubles, I think they would probably be leading the league in them. Because I think Edwards was close on assists and Fletcher was close on rebounds.
Fletcher was 23.7 rebounds, 10 assists. Edwards 20 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 steals.
5 steals, and
and he ran almost all of those back for layups as well.
Yeah, and they're the kind of things that kind of break your back. And you just didn't see Manchester was just a question of too many moving parts. And Jason Swain had it right on the commentary. They've got shot makers, but eventually those shots get difficult. So Sam Cassell came out and made some tough shots early. And for Newcastle, you kind of went back and forward and scored a little bit. Newcastle's, again, lost kind of the end of the first quarter and the end of the second quarter, which is becoming a habit for them. So they're going to have to look at the lineups at the end of quarters. For Eagles, Pfluger and Sayers gave them some really good minutes. And when those two give them really good minutes at the wing spot, and give them production at the wing spot, and that's when they go from scoring 80 a game to scoring 100 a game. Maxwell, up and down, scores a bit, scores early, tends to struggle a little bit in the second half. Physically, 6'10" might be feeling the course of the season. But Manchester just, just too many moving parts. You didn't see Johnson much. You didn't see Ulf as much. They all make plays, but you never got the impression that there was a particular plan behind the play, and you never got the idea that they could string together 3 or 4 consecutive stops. Sometimes Newcastle miss, but missing is not the same as getting a stop. And at the end, I think Jason said it on the commentary, Fletcher was toying with them a little bit.
He was a bit,
and
the other thing was that also Newcastle did get those runouts as well. Yeah. We talked about Edwards.
What was points off turnovers in that game? Have you got it there?
I haven't got the points off turnovers, but I did want to touch on the. I think it was 17 off the top of my head, I did want to talk about points in the paint. 62 points in the paint for the Newcastle Eagles. Well, and as you say, that's not necessarily the big guys. That's the guards as well getting to the basket.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly, I think Edwards made a 3 in the game. So, so the vast majority of Edwards' points are in the paint. And probably half of Fletcher's. So that's a good start. And they've got some good sign. I mean, Jeramapour can clearly play. They're going to have to find a way of playing through him. I think he's a guy you have to play through. Looking at him, he looks to have the size and the ability to both make shots and make passes, but they're not a structured team which is set up for that at the moment. Cassell really is not really a screen and roll guard, so he is still more of a 2 guard than a point guard, or a combo guard. And
it's interesting because I've covered him playing for Iran in a number of tournaments, and to me he's a well-suited European centre in that sort of pick and roll, good passer of the ball, got some moves in the low post and whatever. Those don't always translate into the BBL, so it's almost like they will have to switch something to get the best out of him, in my view, and whether that sits with Cassell and Satchel on either side shooting step back threes, I'm not sure.
I mean, that's right, because the biggest thing for a good pick and roll big man, which is what he may well be, is a good pick and roll point guard or a good pick and roll guard. And neither Cassell nor Whelan are particularly strong pick and roll guards. Whelan's a penetrating scoring guard, and Cassell is a pound the ball and shoot the ball guard. Neither of them, they both can run screen and roll, but probably Cassell more than Whelan. I think Whelan had a game last week where he had 30 points and 29 shots and no assists. So the old mastermind joke. So that's not necessarily the type of guy that fits well with Jeramapour. It fits quite well with Ulf, because Ulf's just going to go and get it.
He'll get the misses for you.
And Ulf's putting his body on the line. It's easier for a 6'8" guy than it is for a 7-foot guy who is skilled to do that. Because the 7-foot guy who is skilled is thinking, I can give me the ball and we'll make plays off me and we'll run it through that way. So that'll be a test for Pluto, the new coach, to see how quickly he can assimilate those guys. But what we saw today was basically kind of the sidelining of Ouandie, and Hudson didn't really play much.
No. Ouandie has just had a baby this week.
Yeah,
so I give him
a little bit of credit for that.
Yeah. Or his wife had a baby, right?
I'll give him some credit too. So every game's a must-win for Manchester if their aim is to make the playoffs. At the moment, they're not quite in a spiral, but they're in a spin, which is the next step up from a spiral. Spiral, that game could precipitate a spiral, because they lost by 25 and lost by 25 at home, and against a team that hadn't really been playing very well. And they gave up 101 against a team who'd been struggling to score at times. And even then, it wasn't like a game plan, because they had Marshall Johnson on Fletcher for some of the game. That was a plan to try and impact him, but that just let Edwards just go haywire. And they couldn't control Edwards, and then he gave Fluger knocks down some shots, and then they're in trouble.
Yep, let's go on to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 75, Sheffield Sharks 69. No Farrell Gordon in this game, so McCall into the starting lineup. Cheshire's bigs got going early. They got up 12, and we've kind of touched on Sheffield already and their struggles. And actually, the way they got back in this game was Cheshire not scoring for 5 minutes, or they got 2 free throws in the last 5 minutes of the first half to cut it to 5 at half time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a funny game insofar as it was quite a methodical game. Teams were getting their shots, but they weren't necessarily knocking their shots down the whole time. Lowe actually is really impressing me for Cheshire. The way that he's able to score the ball efficiently. I think he had 17 points on 7 shots tonight. And he's not taking away from the other guys. Occasionally, he'll post up and he'll finish. He'll be on the weak side in the dunker spot and he'll get a pass and he'll dunk it, or he'll spot up, or he'll pick and pop for the 3 and he'll finish. And he just looks like a big guy that the guards trust. And then when he comes off at a break, kind of have the more manic energy of Matthew Brian Ammoning, who comes on, who kind of takes a little bit of pressure off the guards by getting the ball in the post and causing a little bit of mayhem with the defense with the other team. And then at times Ben plays them both together, which means that Atiba then has to go and play Marsden and Coke at the same time, which then takes away from the way that Sheffield have been playing with their spacing. So I think Lowe's really been a kind of a slightly forgotten part of the way that Cheshire have come on. In relation to Sheffield, Kipper Nichols, is their stretch 4. He is such an important part of what they do. But he's a rookie and he's inconsistent. And today it was inconsistent. 2 points in 23 minutes. If he plays well, if he's knocking down shots, they become an absolutely far more difficult to guard team. He's the one. He's Justin Gordon. He's the one guy on that Sheffield team who can do that, both at the rim. He can defend undersized. He can score at the rim. He can score from 3. He's different to Rob Marsden. He's different to Mike Tuck. And when he's not on, that means Sheffield generally struggle to score. And then the shooters have to shoot. And Lillard's become aggressive, playing hard, probably because he knew he won't be playing the next game. Hemsley is the guy who nearly brought them back at the end.
Yeah. So Cheshire got 16 in front. They had a 12-4 start to the second half, got out to a 16-point lead. And then, as you say, Hemsley made some shots. And it really didn't look like Sheffield were going to get back into it until that point. He made a couple of good plays, some nice shots, cut it back down to 3 with a minute to go. And then NBA at the other end, 2 strong and 1 goes back to 6, and that was pretty much that.
Yeah, he's a really, Matthew Brian Ammoning is a really interesting player, because he gives you so much and he can also take away stuff. But he has the personality to want to make plays, and you never ever want to discount that. It's time to think, what are you doing? Why are you making that move? Why are you trying to throw it around your back, or why are you going up against that double team? But he has this kind of belief in himself that when it matters, okay, give me the ball. I'll make a play. I'm going to do something. And those players, they grey your hair as a coach. And if Trey Moore is listening in Houston, Texas, hello Trey, it's your fault. But there are guys that can help you win and can make plays when it matters. So as a coach, it's always, do I want him on the floor or do I not want him on the floor at that time? And I think he was -10 in this game, Matthew Bryant. But when it comes to making, finding a place on the court where you have a physical advantage to score the ball when you need a basket, when Sheffield are coming back, it's a 1-possession game. You throw it to him. Why? Because he has that physical advantage. He has that touch around the basket. He has that ability to make that play. than that play in a 6-point game with 40 seconds to go in a 72-65 game is a massive difference.
Yeah.
And then Ben Thomas took the time out and didn't advance the ball.
Hey. Yeah. Good win for Cheshire. Good weekend for the Knicks, and it's really bunching up in the middle of the table. There are now 4 teams on 9 losses. The Raiders on 8. Just a little bit of a gap to the teams outside the playoff places. So if Surrey or Manchester in particular want to make that run, they've got to make that run soon.
Yeah, it's a question of who's up at this time of the season, who's upwardly mobile. And you think Surrey might be. You don't see Manchester. Manchester have lost 10 of the last 11 or something like that. So you don't see them just flicking a switch and getting better, because who are you going to beat? All these other teams are playing well. Who are you going to beat? Surrey, you can see winning some of those games, but they have dug themselves a little bit of a hole. They probably need another 8 wins, 9 wins, and that's not going to be easy. The interesting thing with the teams kind of ganging up in the middle is that they are fluctuating, but particularly in relation to Worcester and Plymouth, there's a real prospect that these teams are good. Not just kind of win one, lose one, win a couple, drop a game, but seriously good. Plymouth have proven that already, that they are good. And they've got a coach who's been there, absolutely been there, and knows the league, knows the game, knows everything inside out. So it is not beyond the bounds of possibility that they keep winning and other teams keep losing, because the teams are going to beat each other. So I don't rule them out the top 3 at all. They've now, Sheffield, you would have said that 2 weeks ago, but Sheffield suddenly have hit that kind of rut whereby actually the guys who were knocking shots down for fun 2 weeks ago aren't doing it now. So Jordan Rattino's not scoring, Nick Lewis isn't making shots, Kipper Nichols is missing in action, that type of thing. And suddenly you realise how unstable and just how fragile it all is. The ecosystem of the basketball team is so fragile. So you might have put them in that category of maybe going for the top 3. And now you're looking at them, are they going to be in the top 7? Not because of a couple of wins. And this may be the catalyst for another 5-game winning streak for them. But Worcester and Plymouth are on an upward trajectory. Plymouth may have peaked. They may have got to the top point of that trajectory, because the way that things are in the BBL, you always think teams are going to win forever when they're on winning streaks, and they never do. So it's always interesting to try and work out where the peak is. And sometimes you have to have a little dip, and then you go again for the end of the season. Leicester, I don't think they're having a dip. I think they're just working things through. I think because you lose 2 games on the last shot, it doesn't count as a dip. It counts as a whatever. But they'll probably use it as a dip to bring, to kind of concentrate the mind. London.
They also play Newcastle and London in quick succession. I think it's next Friday and the Friday after or something.
Those games will very much concentrate the mind. London, who knows? Tough for them because they've got the trophy. 2 games against Surrey, then potentially a final as well. So that's going to be a lot of focus. And the one thing they've demonstrated is that, that the focus isn't always there in every game. So how many games are they going to continue to drop against teams that they shouldn't? They got 2 games against Leicester. If they win them, they should win the league. It's blunt. But you don't know.
I think
Bristol,
even one of them.
Bristol haven't played, so we don't know. They seem to be on an upward trajectory as well, but they've just had COVID postponements. So so who knows if that will set them back a little bit. And we'll find out a lot about Newcastle next week against Leicester. Because I anticipate Gordon will be back for them the way he was walking around the court today in the warm-ups and that. And for Newcastle next week, it is very much, if they want to win the league, they have to win that game. If they don't win that game, they're competing for 3rd, basically. So that becomes, because that's a head-to-head game as well, I think. Or it's a head-to-head game for Newcastle. Lost the first one. So it's all really interesting to see which direction some of these teams go in. Hopefully We'll have a few more interesting games.
I'm sure we will. And we will leave it there for this week. And we will be back with you next Sunday night to break it all down again. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.